Hi everyone, this is audap. Let's continue our game of Akaiito HD Remaster running on Nintendo Switch. Where exactly is this place? A puddle is expanding. And it continues to expand, seemingly without end. In a world distorted red, accompanied by the sound of a dripping liquid, a puddle keeps on expanding. The drops that ran down my cheeks converged at the bottom of my chin and fell. For some reason, I'm crying. Warping and bending, the world continues to become more distorted. Have I been crying because of this distortion? All of this huge puddle has been my... Why would I cry like this? The puddle spreads out even further. If it were only my tears, could the puddle spread out so dramatically? It was more like a small pool, reflecting the moon in the sky. The same sound came from something heavier than just water. The moon had become distorted. That's because my tears have obstructed my vision. And that's why the droplets of dew kept falling. Not resting once in its perfectly round form, the moon wavered and divided into duplicates. The distorted imposture moons cast light without warmth. I don't understand this. Is the moon that is hanging in the sky actually round in shape? I looked upward. Pat! A drop fell on my cheek. Pat! A drop fell on my forehead. This isn't right. These aren't tears. Why even think about it? What liquid could fall from above apart from rain? The sound of raindrops falling struck my eardrums. Now that I think of it, it was raining in the evening as well. Eh? The rain stopped and I gazed at the moon. By the way, is it raining now? Even though the moon is high in the sky, yet it was raining. How strange. If it were the sun, it would be called Fox's Wedding. But what do you call it when the moon is up there instead? Another drop landed on my body. Is this rain? It probably is rain. Come to think of it, it's summer now. Is that why the rain felt so warm? Drops of this hot rain began to fall, and the droplet that slid down from my cheek ran through the corner of my lips and oozed gradually into my mouth. Just a slight salty taste. A slight sweet fragrance. It was very slight and subtle, but all of that came from one tiny drop. And I came to the realization that it wasn't rain or tears, but something thicker, something sticky. With a boom coming from within, my body grew feverish, and yet I felt chilled through the marrow. That thick, unmistakable scent was making me dizzy. Warping and bending, the world continues to become more distorted. In the midst of this red, distorted world, those droplets of red are... I lift my hand to wipe across my lips. But the hand had small, short fingers, and they are pathetically weak. It was what I saw in my dream, my hand when I was still a child. In both of my palms, that sticky, thick liquid. Brightly red with a distinctive luster. It was a shrill, childish, hoarse, and scared cry that sounded as if it came from a stranger. I could not believe it was a scream that came from me. I closed my eyes, desperate, trying to deny my blood-stained hands. Help me, Mom. My mom, who had always protected and watched over me. But Mom is no longer with me. Help me. And suddenly that person's face materialized in my mind. I felt someone's hands grabbing my shoulders. Those hands felt large and rough, and although they weren't that person's hands, they felt reassuring nonetheless. As I wondered who it could be, I opened my eyes and saw a gaping hole before me. The blood that was flowing from the hole made a big puddle of blood on the ground. And the splatter that spouted from the hole landed on my face. I squirmed and shook my body to escape from the hands that were on my shoulders. The pair of hands went limp and slipped from my body. And the body that had just lost its life also lurched forward and collapsed. At the final moment, he called my name and collapsed. The blood that was dripping from my hands, it fell into that puddle and made the sound of falling rain. My body felt no pain. And And the reason I felt no pain is because this isn't my blood. I opened my mouth as far as it could go, and with all my being I screamed. With the ringing of a bell, the curtain fell. The black curtain separated me from the red scene before my eyes. Flinging the futon from my body, I woke up. The moon is brighter than it was yesterday, and the shadow I cast on the futon seemed darker as well. I breathed so hard and rough that I had even forgotten to wipe my sweat-covered body. I was gasping in labored breaths. Am I so out of breath because I really screamed on top of my lungs? If I did, I would have caused such an inconvenience to the other people at the hotel. At last, my breathing turned to a dry laugh. It was a weak, slightly coarse, and unnerving laugh. And it quickly escalated into hysteria. As an attempt to expel that wretched something from my body, my laughter wasn't much different from a scream. And so I laughed by myself for a while, and finally regained my composure. As if to cover up my face, I buried my hands into the two pale palms of my hands. I let out a long sigh. Even knowing it was just a dream, I was still afraid. What could that dream possibly mean? What I saw in my dream last night were a real forest, a real mansion, and a giant tree. In that case, that terrible, ominous red dream I just saw. I lifted my face in great trepidation to look at the owner of that voice. Despite how it was teasing my fear, it sounded a little young and innocent. Through the gaps of my fingers, I peeked at the owner of the voice with my hands still covering my face. I saw a bare leg that looked like a thin, pale porcelain. The moonlight it reflected in the dark made it appear even whiter. And a straw sandal with a red strap. On the left ankle, a gold-colored bell. As the leg moved forward with a step. I see, so the ringing bell must be the sound of this child approaching. Slowly my gaze moved from her beautiful knee. She must have never fallen down in her life, upward to her soft, smooth, and slender thigh. That is how short the hem of her kimono was, allowing me to see that much. And I thought to myself, that's the leg of a girl. As if to verify my conclusion, my attention turned to her sleeves that draped down to her knees. Her right sleeve was dyed light red, while the left sleeve was in dove purple with a flower pattern. Her kimono was completely opposite from that person's blue and white kimono with asymmetric pairs of sleeves. Even so, this kimono is... The red pain came again, reminding me not to remember. Am I still trapped in a dream? No, this isn't a dream. I'm well aware of this fact. Applying strength in my fingers, I dug my fingernails into my face in order to dampen the red pain. The light scarlet flower wavered, and the bell rang in place of a footstep. Hold on a minute. The one whose singing voice interrupted her. As if paralyzed, my body stiffened and could not move. My mouth, my fingertips, my vision. The only movement I could manage was restricted to slight movement up at my extremities. The girl, who is shorter than I am, walked next to me. She stooped her body and looked right at my face. The corner of her eyes shone with a crimson glare, and in her large pupils that seemed redder than crimson, like a lake of blood, I could see my terrified face in reflection. Her eyes narrowed, seemingly with satisfaction. The edges of her tiny lips lifted ever so slightly. It was a telling smile, an impression of a cat's smile, having caught its prey. Her mischievous giggle ran in my ears and tickled my earlobe. It was a teasing laughter, like an imp that is playing a trick on her victim. The door to this room is locked, and yet this girl is in my room. I don't think she is a normal child, for no little girl of her age these days would wear a kimono like that. In a crisp and clear voice that sounded no less distinct than a bell, she replied. A bell rang. Even though she didn't move an inch, there was the sound of a bell. From behind her, a shadow slid across sideways and stood beside her. She was wearing a dual-colored kimono in red and black. On her right ankle, a gold bell. Red eyes, thinly colored hair, and the ends facing outwards as if mussed from sleeping. The two of them, standing side by side, resembled each other like a mirror image. Only their facial expressions differed. In contrast to Nozomi's proud, haughty look, Mikage seemed timid and anxious. Twins? My heart skipped a beat at the thought of that common word. Why? Why would a word like that? What in the world? Is this pain? Even though she said more important things like coming to take me away, and that woman, and Nai no Chi, why did that innocuous word grab my attention even more? Being utterly confused, I asked everything that I could think of. The first girl held up her chin haughtily and glared at me with contempt. Swirling to the back of Mikage-chan, Nozomi-chan embraced her as if to crush her as she continued. As if she was gliding effortlessly away from Mikage-chan, Nozomi-chan came to me and lifted my chin with her finger so that our eyes would cross. Eh? Was that dream their doing? If that was the case, then they must know something I don't. Things about myself. Their laughter drowned out my timid inquiry. It was an unnerving laughter that carried a tinge of malice. In her squinted eyes, her mirror-like pupil that looked like blood spilled over water, a bewitching light wavered. Getting my hair out of the way, her fingers slid down to my throat. Her fingers bent as she applied force into my skin. Nozomi-chan's fingernail dug into the soft flesh of my throat. My body shriveled as if a blade had been held at my throat. I was too scared to even swallow. As her voice came from behind, I felt my hair being brushed aside, and my neck became exposed at that instant. A cold shiver ran up along my spine.
勘違いしてないかな。私の血って普通だよ。そうかしら。そうだよ。知らないのね。本当に何にも知らないのね。ハトだったかしら。あなたの血筋は特別なのよ。紛れもなく特別な血を伝えているの。それがニエの血。ニエの血。ルツコ、専門用語はわけわかんないよね。
See, the blood of a special family that has been offered as a living sacrifice to gods, or oni since ancient times. It is said that by drinking this blood, non-human beings can enhance their power. It is also mentioned in the famous Journey to the West that if you eat the flesh of a monk, you will not grow old, and if you drink the blood of a monk, you will not die. Thus Tang Sanzan became a target of the yokai. By eating the heart or flesh of tigers, lions, bears, and other fierce beasts, one can gain courage and strength. The idea that one can inherit the nature of a particular animal by consuming its particular part of it is common in many primitive religions. Both the legend of the Yaibikuni, a girl who chose to die from fasting after living for 800 years without growing old because she mistakenly ate mermaid flesh, and the legend of Siegfried, a Nordic hero who became able to understand the words of birds and animals after defeating a dragon and eating its heart, have the same idea at their very root. Oh, okay.
あらゆる呪術で使われているように、血そのものに特別な力があるのは知っていて。力の血であり、命の血。形ある肉の一部でありながら、形のない玉の一部でもあるの。すなわち、両義を生む対極。万物の根源。床たち殺地、かぐつちおろち。血は神そのものを表す言霊。だから人は血を捧げるのよ。ニエの血を。ニエの血。血には貴賤があるのよ。あなたの血はね、とても純粋で尊い。ヤシオリの酒が主様の塩素を酔いつぶしてしまったように。そうする。専門用語はわけわかんないよね。
I don't really recognize. This is a strong sake that has been brewed 8 times. The ya here does not mean 8, but rather many times. Ah, okay.
とても濃くて強いのよ。ヤソ、ヤオ、ヤチの人の血を飲み干してもなお釣り合わないほど。神でも物でも何でもいいわ。あらゆる人でないものはあなたの血を飲むことでより大きな存在になることができるの。より大きな。そう、強い力を手に入れられるの。だからとても特別なの。だからみんなが欲しがるのよ。そして奪い合いになる。この土地には強い封印があるから、ここにいる限り外のあやかしに嗅ぎつけられることはないけれど。だから血が絶えず今まで残っているけれど、今も昔もニエの血の持ち主は珍しいのよ。誰もがあなたのように血の匂いを隠せるわけではない。もし隠せなかったらわかるでしょ。隠れないと、逃げないと、鬼に捕まったら食べられてしまうのよ。
The edges of their cute lips bent into a cruel smile. Those eyes that were glowing red came closer.
だからその貴重な血の持ち主は大事に大事に育てられて、崇める者に喜んでもらうために。 恐れる者の機嫌を伺うために。生贄として捧げられてきたのよ。ずっと神代の昔から。
I had no idea. I had no idea that such a blood coursed through the veins of myself, my father and grandmother. Ah, that dream. Because of a monster, father was... No, no, it can't be. It could not be. Mother had told me that father died in a fire.
強情なのね。強情なんかしら。いいわよ別に。弱い子よりはそのぐらいの方が好きだもの。ますますあなたが欲しくなってしまったわ。
Suddenly, the hand that grabbed me by my throat pulled back, and that gave me a moment to catch my breath. Nozomi-chan knelt on the floor and straddled my leg over the futon that still covered my lower body. Although I was able to look down upon her in this position, the roles we were playing in this macabre scene hadn't changed. That pair of red eyes gazing at me are those of a small predator fixed upon her prey. Her coral-colored tongue emerged and licked her lips. I had nowhere to run. Her eyes widened in surprise, but immediately narrowed as she was amused and humored.
私が人間だとでも思っていたの?
At that moment, my vision blurred. In the place of Nozomi-chan's face, I saw the wooden pattern of the ceiling. Mikage-chan's hands reached from behind me and cupped my cheeks, guiding my face upwards. Inch by inch, I could feel Nozomi-chan's breathing come even closer. And I felt it. Her breath was on my neck. It was a long, cold breath, devoid of a body temperature. Goosebumps broke out on my skin. I cried out with a nasal tinge in my voice, and my ears had warped the sight of the ceiling. Even though she wasn't pinning me down tightly, she could have drained my strength from my face with her fingertips. Nozomi-chan placed her hands on my petrified shoulders. Her soft, cold lips pressed upon my neck, and in the next moment, I felt a rigid sensation against my skin. Superhuman strength born from panic, I reached my right hand under my pillow. Since last night's dream wasn't too bad, and I had my doubts, I hadn't pasted them in the room's four corners as she had instructed. Under my pillow was what Uzuki-san had given me last night. With my groping hand, I pulled out the charm and struck out at Nozomi-chan within a sweeping motion. Then came a blinding flash. A crackling light, like a static discharge, surrounded my body, and I cowered in surprise. The impact that I was anticipating did not come, and there was no pain either. But I could feel the bits of what used to be paper charm disintegrating into dust. Although I couldn't make sense of what just happened, the charm was the real thing that produced real results. Uzuki-san is amazing. Momentarily, once that metallic scent from that unexpected burst, like a firecracker, went into my nose, it led my meandering thought back to its proper track. Given my current circumstances, I cannot afford to zone out like I always do. I no longer felt Mikage-chan's fingers upon my face, and strength has once again returned to my limbs. I can make a run for it. As soon as I realized I had regained my freedom, I quickly surveyed my surroundings. Nozomi-chan and Mikage-chan have moved several steps away from me.
まさか、そんなものを隠し持っていたなんて思いもしなかったわ。どうやらあなたを侮りすぎた。
Behind the facade of her cool, tranquil voice, I could see Nozomi-chan's irrepressible rage. Making no attempt to hold back, she darted a terrifying glare at me and held out her pearl-white palm at my face. Her palm. That harmless flash of light for me. So the power of that charm had unleashed upon them instead. Her palm is now scorched and charred beyond belief, and I couldn't bear to look at it. Terrified and trembling helplessly, tears began to flow from my eyes. I desperately wanted to pull the futon that I was grabbing on tightly in my hands over my head and hide. I didn't mean to do anything like that. All I wanted to do was to make her pull away from me, and I had no intention to hurt her.
何を怯えているの？これはあなたがつけた傷ではなくて、あなたがやったことなのよ。その目を曇らす涙を拭いて、ちゃんとご覧なさいな。私、ごめんなさい。謝って済むようなことかしら。私たちの慈しみを傷つけた報い。あなたの二重の血であがなってもらうけれど、これは随分と。
Quivering with the color of blood, her eyes were burning with a furious rage like a flame in the darkness.
高くつくわよ。
The twins edged forward a step towards me. Discarding my feeling of guilt, it was pure unadulterated fear that drove me to escape. For some reason, I couldn't run. My legs and hands simply refused to budge. Even though they weren't touching me, I was paralyzed for some reason. That was probably because I had been looking at their glowing red eyes. For an ordinary human being like me, there's no way to resist the likes of them. And they took another step forward.
最後の一滴まで私たちのものにすれば、少しは腹も癒えるかしらね。はい。最後の一滴まで飲み干せば。
It's hopeless. They are already within reach. If I don't run, they will surely suck all the blood from my body. And yet, my body is petrified, and I couldn't even shift my gaze away from by myself.
随分とお預けされたけど、それももうおしまい。
The moonlight disappeared from sight as a dark shadow covered my vision. Nozomi-chan's eyes are red. So red. Am I just going to die here in the end?
そんなことはさせないわ。
A voice that belonged to someone outside the room echoed quietly, and a pale blue light beyond my field of vision erased the red light, stopping its hold on me.
誰なの？
Nozomi-chan removed her gaze from me in search of the voice's owner, and I was freed from paralysis.
私はユメイ。
As if the name became a catalyst, the darkness that had blocked out the moonlight in the room began to fall apart. With the dots that appeared in the room as their centers, they began to absorb the ambient light and grew in intensity. The darkness that grew in the room, and the countless shards of moonlight that floated in midair. When the fragments reached a specific intensity, they went from repose to motion. And it was just like the flower petals that were waiting for the wind to arrive in order to begin their dance. Like a flock of butterflies that launched into the air. And there she was, standing in the center of the flock of glowing butterfly.
ケイちゃんを守るために形になった。あなたたちとは対立するもの。
Ah, that person has come. The person who commanded the moonlight butterflies in my dream has come. Rising to their feet with the ringing of bells, Nozomi-chan and Mikage-chan stepped forward. They stood between me and that person from my dreams, Yume-san, as if to hinder us.
あなたは確か10年前の。それでのこのこ現れたのね。また私たちの邪魔をするの。するわ。ケイちゃんから離れなさい。嫌だと言ったらどうするつもり？
Like a mischievous child, Nozomi-chan's eyes narrowed menacingly.
自分よりも弱い者に命令されるのは嫌いだもの。
the scene before me began to waver. A light, like a red, translucent mist, began to escape from their bodies. It was an expression of anger towards an intruder, and that sinister red glow that dwelled in their eyes seemed to burst forth as if it was overflowing. Driving that red mist, as it wriggled like a living creature, the twins took another step towards Yume-san.
あなたが出てきたところで一体何ができるというの？主様を抑えるので手一杯のあなたに何が？そうやって人の形の写し身を作るのが精一杯なんじゃないかしら。勝てる見込みはないのになぜ？
Yumi-san's expression remained stern as she faced the twins, who were coming closer with their ringing bells.
勝ち目がないのは分かっているわ。
When she held out her hand towards the twins, a butterfly resting on her fingertip took flight. Flying towards Nozomi-chan, the butterfly traced a path through the air with pale blue scales of light, and then the mist lurched into motion. It moved in a way that resembled an insect-eating plant that had lured its prey with its bewitching red at the moment of capture. Captured by the wriggling mist, the butterfly was consumed at the point of contact as it vanished into the darkness. Upon a closer look, I realized it wasn't just the butterfly that had disappeared. Red and blue, the colors of two lights belonging to opposite nature, came together and disappeared as if they were neutralized, causing the mist to disappear. However, judging from the significant difference in quantity and volume, it was as if only the butterfly had been destroyed.
ずいぶんとお粗末だったけれど、今のを海鮮の矢合わせと思っていいのかしら。ええ、構わないわ。私の存在をかけてでも、ケイちゃんだけは助けるつもりだから。ずいぶんとバカなのね。どう考えてもそれは無理。先に消えるのはあなたでしょ。あなたが消えてしまったら誰がその子を守るというの？
Instead of answering her question, Yumi-san unleashed all of the butterflies at once. It was an unbelievable swarm of butterflies that made no sense to me as they danced violently like a storm of flowers. The room was immediately flooded with the color of moonlight, and even my hands seemed to have taken that pale blue hue. Amidst that mass of pale blue light, only the conspicuous red glow surrounding Nozomi-chan and Mikage-chan remained. And upon that boundary that separated the two colors, the blue and red lights clashed, producing their final flash before they dissipated into nothingness. As soon as the darkness attempted to expand, it would be immediately banished by the surge of red and blue light. Yet another clash of power. Within the center of that pale blue light, as each butterfly disappeared, Yumi-san's form began to waver, I understood what was happening. Those butterflies are Yumi-san's body. They comprise the power that manifested her physical form.
本当に捨て身なのね。ですが姉様、これではさすがに。いいじゃないの。やらせてあげましょう。ここで自滅してもらえるなら、それはそれで。けれど姉様、私たちも。構いはしないわ。減った分はニエの血が癒してくれるんだもの。ねえ。
Through the moonlight space in the room, the red glow from Nozomi-chan's eyes was enough to make my body rigid. And then a reality dawned on me. Yes, that's it. I'm the one they're after. Although I don't understand why she would sacrifice herself to protect me, if this continues, Yume-san will disappear completely.
もういいよ。十分だよ。ケイちゃん、そんなこと言わないで。でも。
If Yume-san were to disappear, would I be able to protect myself? Impossible. There's just no way. In that case, you should just... Though I can't face my mom for this when she wrecked her own health to raise me, but just to give up on me.
ゆめいさんだけでも。ケイちゃん。いいの、私だって嫌だけど、だけど結局私もダメなら。ダメなら、その女だけでも助けてほしいの？見逃してほしいの。あなたのその二重の血の流れる体と引き換えに。
I nodded my head.
あら、どうしましょう。お願いだから。でもね、あなたのことだけじゃなくて個人的な恨みもあるのよ。八つ咲きにしても飽き足らないぐらいの。だからやっぱり許してあげない。
She declared with a cruel smile.
あなたのようなバカを指して言うのかしらね。飛んで火にいる夏の虫って。
As if swirling with the flames of hell, the red light reached out and caught the last moonlight butterfly. Yumi-san propped her hands against her own pitiful shadow, fighting to contain her scream. The pale blue light that flooded the room only a moment ago has weakened substantially, and her figure became so frail that she might disappear at any moment.
さあ、そろそろ終わりにしましょうか。
Nozomi-chan whispered in an ill-fitting, gentle voice as she thrust her right hand forward. That absent-minded, chaotic light that surrounded the twins began to converge and amass in her hand.
私にだって慈悲はあるのよ。
She narrowed her eyes and gazed dreamily at the light that has gathered in her hand.
そうね。これぐらいなら楽にいけるかしら。
It was a mass of red light, so bright and so dense that I couldn't see through it. It is probably an evil light that is powerful enough to erase the weakened Yumi-san completely, leaving not even a trace of her behind. The crisp ringing of a bell sounded as Nozomi-chan approached her. No response. Is she already so weak that she couldn't even answer? But that can't possibly happen. The twins are already close enough to touch her. As Nozomi-chan smirked triumphantly and raised her shining right hand high in the air, there's a knock at the door.
ケイさん、今の悲鳴は何事だ？中に何かがいるのか？
Ah, that voice. That tone. If this isn't a convenient hallucination, then there's no mistake. The door handle rattled.
鍵か。どうする？壊して踏み入るか？
That voice whispered an outrageous intention that no normal person would consider, and it caused Nozomi-chan to turn her gaze at the door. Now's my chance. If they can touch me, then I can touch them. I am not only taller in height, but my weight is also. More importantly, that red mist doesn't seem to have much effect on me, who possesses a physical body. So this ought to work, and I'm not that reckless. I summoned every ounce of strength and willpower as I charged at Nozomi-chan. Even though it was just a short distance, I did not slow down before the impact. As a result, even I fell down on the floor despite having braced myself for the tackle. I rose to my feet immediately and checked my surroundings while moving towards the entrance. Okay, perhaps she had not anticipated my tackle. Nozomi-chan toppled without breaking her fall.
この見影止めるのよ。
The moment she gave her command, the bell rang and the sound was coming towards me. Hurry, hurry, hurry. I didn't look back and my hand was already on the door.
ケイさん、鍵を開けたら横に引くんだ。
And the lock is open. I did as she asked and turned my body aside, leaving the entrance unobstructed. My neighbors. Only care about themselves. The moment my field of vision changed, the door began to open. In the room that had somehow gotten even darker, the red glow of Mikage-chan's eyes left a trail as she reached the door. A shadow came gliding into the room. That hazy shadow that almost brushed my side swung... Wait. That hazy shadow that almost brushed my side swung an object in her hand in a downward arc, and Mikage-chan dodged in an instant. A single flash of silver light. What went through Mikage-chan's body and stopped before it touched the floor is a finely sharpened steel blade. Before her wildly waving hair could fall back on her shoulders, Azuki-san assumed her stance once more and opened her blue right eye.
写し身を崩して逃れたか。
Almost at the same time as the bell rang, Azuki-san dashed towards Mikage-chan in pursuit.
だがこの太刀を舐めてもらっては困る。この糸は百者を除き狂気を払う霊刀。たとえ霊体であってもただで済むとは思わないことだ。
The wound created by that horizontal cut disintegrated and vanished in the air.
それは鬼切り部の。
私の名は千葉うずき。糸の太刀を担う千葉島の鬼切り役。
そうする。専門用語はわけわかんないよね。
Onikiri. An Oni killer that has been granted an official appointment by the Onikiri Division Chief is called an Onikiri Officer. In ancient times, appointments were granted by Kibitsuhiku no Mikoto, the third son of the Emperor Kore, and one of the four Shido shoguns. The position is hereditary in nature, just like the samurai clans. Even though the holder of this position may lead his or her own family and group of retainers, only the representative holds the position of Onikiri Officer. Under normal circumstances, the Onikiri Officer are the same person. However, since there are groups in which the same person as the Onikiri Officer, naturally there are groups where there are more than two Onikiri Officers. Oh yeah, of course.
ふん、あなたが。
With the gentle ringing of a bell, Nozomi slid across and stood next to Mikage-chan, her eyes glowing red as she asked.
前からそれほど経っていないのに、もう代替わりしているのね。
人の寿命はそう長くない。それほどがどれほどかは知らないが、100年生きる人間は稀だと覚えておくがいい。
知っているわ。人間の脆さなんて嫌になるほど。病にはかかるし、すぐに死んでしまうし。
そう思って人を侮るのなら、つまらない小細工はよしてもらおう。言っておくが、私はその程度の邪視なら無効化できる。
あら、それは残念。
Jashi, meaning wicked gaze. I see. That's why when my eyes met Nozomi-chan's, my body would freeze and refuse to move.
だけど侮ってなんかいなくてよ。その太刀の持ち主には随分お世話になったもの。前任のお役目から受けた借りまであなたに返してあげたいほどに。それであなたも私たちを封じに来たの。だとしたら今回はやけに対応が早いのね。
The tip of the blade began to move.
対応というからには、すでに何かをやらかした後ということか。
あら、失言だったかしら。
私がこの地に来たのは別件を追っていてのことでね。人にあだなす怪異を打つのが我ら鬼切り部の使命。千葉島東大の鬼切り役としての務め果たさせてもらおうか。
Sound of a heavy step. As Suzuki-san took a step forward, both Nozomi-chan and Mikage-chan hopped backwards at the same time. The tip of their blade barely missed them by a few centimeters.
怖い怖い。姉様、そろそろ潮時でしょう。 うね。所詮は遊びで来ただけだし、なんだか興ざめしてしまったもの。
The room suddenly darkened as if a cloud blocked out the moonlight.
三重の血を諦めるのは残念だけれど、大事をとって引きましょう。
As if melting into the darkness, the twins vanished into the shadows,
では、ごきげんよう。
leaving only the ringing of bells. They disappeared from sight. Eventually, even the echoes of the ringing bell faded completely. Yet still, nothing happened. All that was left in the room was silence. It appears that the twin monsters in the form of girls have really left. Having forgotten to even breathe due to overwhelming anxiety, I released the carbon monoxide that had filled my lungs. The anxiety that had kept me going left my body with my exhalation, and I collapsed on the floor.
すごい。まだ生きてる。やったよ。助かったよ。
いや、まだだ。
I scanned the room frantically, having exhausted all my strength. That would put me in a really bad spot. And Azuki-san, who warned me that it wasn't over yet. Her eye shining eerily in pale blue, stared at Yumi-san's direction.
彼女も人間ではないのだろう。
Having forgotten that I have collapsed without an ounce of strength left in my body, I tried moving forward, but simply fell flat on the floor. I had to crawl on all fours and somehow managed to move forward.
ちょっと待ってよ。ユメイさんは私を助けてくれたんだよ。
Somehow I managed to position myself between them, and I focused whatever willpower I had left on bracing my knees. As I knelt there, I saw before me a drawn sword shining in its cold gleam before me. The sword was quite different from the smooth, shining, silver-colored katana held by a shogun or samurai in a period drama. It was a darkened, heavy black metal that carried an incredible wavy pattern that resembled the grains of wood. Drawing a gentle curve from its hilt, the blade was well polished and sharp enough to reflect my very soul.
あなたの信頼を得るための偽りではないという保証を。
そんなこと。
ないと断定できるほど、あなたは彼女のことを知っているのかい？
それは。
Even though I don't know, but I probably should have known. I really hate myself for having forgotten everything.
ケイさん、そこをどくんだ。
いや。
どうしても。
どうしても。
そうか。ならば仕方がない。私は鬼を切る者。その邪魔をするならば、人とて許すつもりはない。
I couldn't be sure if that was just a threat or she meant what she said. The blade came ever closer towards me. The tip of her blade touched the hairs on my cheek. But suddenly, my thoughts turned to whimsical ideas as my way of escaping from the impending crisis. No, I've got to keep it together. But why do I keep running into situations like this today? Did I do something bad to deserve this? I was temporarily blinded by a flash of white light. What a terrible time to be dazed. I guess this time it really could be the end. Just as I thought all hopes were lost.
大見出しはなんとかに刃物。某有名私立に通う US さん真夜中の強行って感じかね。おーい、ケイってば生きてるかい？
咲夜さん。セーブするファイルを選んでね。セーブするファイルを選んでね。タイトル画面に戻るよ。
Alright, well, we stop it there. This is Apostrophe watching Akaiito HD Remaster running on Nintendo Switch. Yeah, I mean, obviously things are getting more exciting now. So it's I think it's a much more interesting story. I'm glad we stuck with it. I wasn't sure if there was going to be, enough mystery and horror in here, but there's certainly more. There's certainly enough of that and more, I assume, as we continue the story. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching. I will see you at the next stream.